All right, let's get started. My name is Dee Dee Minkidi. My parents, Carol and the late Ifeanyi, own the Grolier, and I've been helping James and Elizabeth manage the store for the last couple of years since my dad passed. And welcome to our virtual reading series. We were itching to get back to readings, and we finally launched this up in, I think, December it was, and we've had some great readings so far. And we've got a few more on the docket, and including hopefully getting back into person over the next couple of months, or at least a hybrid option. So definitely follow our website and our email list for some of the upcoming readings as well. Tonight, we're really excited to welcome three very gifted poets, two that are based in the Boston area, and one not too far off at Williams. We're going to start with Jennifer Militello. Jennifer is the author of the poetry collection, The Pact, which is her most recent work that came out this year, as well as the memoir Knockwood, and 4 additional collections of poetry, including A Camouflage of Specimens and Garments, and Body Thesaurus, named one of the top books of 2013 by Best American Poetry. Her work has appeared all over the place, including the American Poetry Review, Best American Poetry, Best New Poets, The Nation, The New Republic, The Paris Review, Poetry, and Tin House. She currently teaches at the MFA program at New England College. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you so much, Dee Dee, for that introduction. And thank you, of course, to Carol and Elizabeth and James at the Grolier for having me tonight. I'm sure all of you here know what an incredible place the Grolier is, and it has meant so much to me as an obvious reader of poetry, as a lover of poetry, and as a writer of poetry. And so, we are really, really fortunate to have it. And I cannot emphasize that enough. It's also really wonderful to read with Rowan and Katherine tonight. So I'm really looking forward to hearing your poems. I'm just gonna read from The Pact tonight because it is a new book and it has sort of seen the light of day again and again on Zoom, and I'm hoping it will be sort of in the physical world as well fairly soon, especially now that the weather is getting warm, and hopefully we all have the opportunity soon to sort of welcome one another and be together in person again. And sort of in keeping with that, this is a book about relationships, about human relationships, about the way love manifests, both love of family and romantic love. So I'm just going to try to give a sense of the different sort of phases that the book goes through as it kind of moves forward. And I'm going to begin with the first poem of the book, which is one of 2 poems that frame the book and the question of the book. It asks a question that is repeated throughout the book. It starts with the question, what is love? And it is called Agape Feast. An agape feast is a love feast or a shared communal meal. So this is Agape Feast. What is love but the bruise or the abrasion, the fruitlessness, the deep incision? What is love if it isn't on stage or placed between 2 sonnets' turns? What is love nerving down the spine? Just now I thought I felt it stir or heard it like the wall's small nest of baby mice, like chemicals set to preserve imported furs. Its complaint got in, rain astringent at its end, fat as a blackberry, thin as a stick, stationed overseas at the vein itch or artery strap, bubble, flutter of pain. An emptiness pinned to its lapel, it is an aftermath at best. Shh, is what it says. Dear, diagram yourself. Its pigeons shuttle like the imbalance of a hat. Pores seen, lips curled. It is not the documents correct. Stamps are streaked away with bleach. Bags are searched. The fingers of government workers black with ink. Its ribs grate like gnashed teeth. It sings like the polished floors of a bank. It reads all the lines in your palm as the equivalent of death, carrier of diseases and lice, wool blanket stink, fire beneath the bridge. Its past is a chasm, its past is a lid. Let it catch at the latch of your throat and body bag your want and infinity your need. Its Jesus is the noose at your neck. Its Jesus is the blue slits veins seam at your wrist. Its mercy is electric, it is storied, it is rank. Its mercy is a tablet dissolved in a glass, more invisible the more you drink. So there are a series of sibling poems in the book. I think, one of the things about families is that every one member of a family manifests themselves for each person in the family in like 75 different ways. So we are each so many different people to all those people in our families. And so these poems are sort of an attempt to give that sense of the glimpses we have of the different manifestations of those members of our families. And so there are, all these different, there's sibling invention, there's sibling Frankenstein, just this sense of this one person pieced into many people. And I'm going to read Sibling Medusa tonight. In the pictures, the hair snakes all look the same, though I know better. Every snake is a different persona, though all are out for murder. Every hiss is a criticism unfettered. Every head is a hatred on its leash. Every slither is a movement toward hurting me further, like our mother. I learned long ago to only approach you from the mirror. Your scales overlap. They have the failings of your heart. All my shields crumble. All my winged shoes fail. You are my sister. My love for you is a ladder I climb until I fall. There is a Red Sea in my blood, and it is your mood, venomous at root, ever changing as a god. There is a Red Sea in my blood, and I must keep it still, as its tides would drown us, as our parents still hope we will break bread. We believed you were a priestess. We put you on the urns. We lifted you up and loved you alone. Now you are a monster and want me gone. Were I to carry it as a weapon, your head would turn on me. I am only one of the statues that surround your lair. All of our family is there, posed and still, paralyzed by your punishment, your scathe, your skill. Where I had my home, I am no longer at home. I was closest. I was in your crib. I was in your bed. I wore your clothes. I shared your name. Is this why you hate me? Is this why I now see the deadly inside red of 1,000 stretched open mouths? Your serpents control me. Your eyes are voiced over. I don't know you. Where is my sister? So moving on from family, I will read one of the poems that deals with romantic love in the book. And this title, this poem title, always strikes me as a kind of thesis statement of the book. And the title of this poem is "The Punishment of One is the Love Song of Another." At last I have found my assassin. At last I have struck gold. When my past hissed with cobras, you let me sleep. When I was falling, you brought the ground closer and made gravity of flowers like a kiss. One body moving is a seduction. One body is a practice leap and a parachute unsprung. Only the scalpel knows the passion of blood. We soothe it with cold and sing it to sleep. We leap at the chance to be blistered. We listen and stiffen, we pivot and reap. My rib cage could be a wasp nest built of paper. My hand could be the slip of sand across itself to slake the great unknown. Snow coughs along the windows now and listens differently to the pure. Snow brocades like cotton, prayers like burdens go. So I will shift gears a little bit for this next poem. So one of the moments that I guess started this book, there inside me, wherever books start, was a moment at the MFA in Boston when I stumbled on the Nkisi and Kandi that they have there. I don't know if any of you have seen it, but it is an incredible wooden figure bristling with iron nails. And when you read the card attached to it, you find out that it's a 19th century power figure from the Congo, and it is used to make agreements between people. So it is used to seal a vow or to settle differences, but it is also considered a hunter healer, and so it also can sort of be a vengeful object. And there is a hollow at the center of it that's filled with herbs and seeds, and that's what kind of calls the spirit to inhabit it. And then when they want to wake the Nkisi and Kandi to do its job, that's when they hammer one of the iron nails into it. So it is really a visually striking figure, sort of daunting and incredibly powerful. And in thinking about the way that these poems of love, but also complex emotional feelings about other people and relationships and the ways that we love and sort of hate and try to figure one another out. This figure really felt like a sort of central, almost like a lodestone of sorts. So this is a poem titled Nkisi and Kandi, and the epigraph reads, "This striking figure with its serenely rendered face and violently pierced body was made to contain and direct a spirit in order to assist people in need." And that's from the Art Institute of Chicago. And there are several poems that deal with this figure, and there are different epigraphs for each. Hunter of murderers, of liars, of thieves, she loosens tongues, will not quench thirst. Pierce her shoulders to make it start, scratch her glass eyes, blind as bone. Place inside her chamber potent herbs, earth from graves, a string or shell. Activate her to punish or afflict. Estrange her and an ache will strike. If a dead deer lies by the side of the road, she is the weeks of decay before it's gone, grinning jawbone dragged by wolves. Rest your head in her lap to calm your nerves. Place your mouth to her breast to let the dead go. Sew your name into the lining of your coat. Close her eyelids with a gentle thumb. She exhales until the wind blasts shingles off a house. Scrape her with blades to seal her power. Slit her with knives to awaken a vow. Way to call a lover. Way to cure the moon. She is carved from mortar and oxblood and wood. She is carved from water as it falls. be destroyed by her image when telling a lie. Let each iron nail denote an oath. Her heart mummified, jewel in the chest. Her fist is a lantern infested by dark. Her dowry is dust or blood on the lips. Read the entrails, swallow dirt, unbottled cyanide green. The facets of this can be read like braille. Unmask your hands from the past kid gloves. And I will maybe just read 2 more poems. There is a bookstore, an incredible used bookstore right down the street, well, actually up a hill from the campus where I teach. And it has been there for a really long time, and it's known for having like 200 billion books. And the man who owns it and works at the desk is like 700 years old, and just it's always a really incredible place to go, because when you walk through it, it's a maze, and so you think you're at the end, and then you turn the corner and there's actually 6 more rows, and then when you go through those rows, something else opens up. And there are many used bookstores in the world that look like this, but at this particular bookstore, I found a classical dictionary of the vulgar tongue. And it was a reprint of an old book. It's basically just a sort of catalog of vulgarities. And so I started to pull a list of insults from it. And I was just thinking about the way that, we often hear words that are powerful and strike us from those we love. And we can often feel, injured and insulted. And I started to really think about this concept of tough love and the way that people we love, and especially our parents, will, sort of try to toughen us up by, by handing us this version of affection. And so this poem is Tough Love in a Vulgar Tongue. And it sort of catalogs some of what I have found in that book, and then also some new original ones. She is baker-legged, a bad bargain, bacon-fed user of the back door. She squints like a bag of nails. She is an admiral of the narrow seas. She is adrift, a spoil sport, a mar-all aground. She often goes against the grain. She is angling for farthings. She is full of emptiness, a fumbler, funky, a fussock. What a gill flirt, what a rum-dubber. Gimlet-eyed with thingamabob, she squeaks in the gizzard. She steals goods for sale. She is hunchbacked, humdrum, hubcapped, impure. She would no sooner hush the cull than murder the fellow. She's a hussy, a hizzy. She's got the blue devils, loafing as a couple of inkle weavers, like an owl in an ivy bush, cesspool needing to be pumped, a girl with 2 black eyes, chattering like a magpie, pulling off her boots. Who could know what to do? She is a jingle brains, a jackhammer, a Jason's fleece, is even left-handed, pug-nosed, pudding-sleeved, purse-proud, puzzle-text, pupil-monger, quail-pipe, quack-solver, queer cove, rabbit-catcher, ramshackle, rascal scouring the streets, more brawn than brains, timber-toe, tickle-pitcher, tow-row, nimble-tongued, unlicked cub, unrigged, untrussed, whining whittler, whistle-belly, whippersnapper, wiseacre, wolf in the stomach, word-pecker, zigzag or zany, zad only a mother could love. And I think I will end with the final poem in the book, which sort of closes that frame that is opened with the first poem. So, you know, this is where when I talk about it, I sort of talk about what we do when we repeat a line or a refrain in a poem, or the effect that happens when something that is repeated is changed by what happens in between the two occurrences, right? And so hopefully writing a sort of general poem about love after all of these poems looking at the specifics of different relationships and injuries and affections and obsessions, this whole sense of the word has changed. And so I think this is a poem, hopefully, that ends up being a little bit ironic, a little bit wry. In it, love is an avocado pit. It's a nuclear testing site. It's a stocked pond. And you know, I just love the sense of kind of artificiality and sort of strange growth in those comparisons. So this is Ode to Love. Place its toothpicked pit in water, watch the grist of its insides grow. Witness its populous bloom, honeycombed with rough. Its cobblestones grip the heart in their mitt, a closed fist thickened and gritty as silt. The swamp of the plum beet adamant as weeds, the dish of which is salted by complexities or cries. It is a house in which we cannot live, the quiver on an arrow we cannot launch. It grows late over Nevada as we watch, strikes its gullies, we grow burnt as a moth, mimics a sleep of archives and the small lies we forget, mimics all laughter broken by the time it leaves the mouth. With its moving parts, its chimes, its gleam, it muddies our archways, lying low, gives off noise and steam, its mechanics clear the fence. It must be wooed, must be quieted, hush, it must be soothed. Has a snag, has a bleed, a drape, flaps awkwardly at its edges, a heron, at its center, a wide bottom, perfect with fish. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. That was wonderful. I love how you described the portion on the poems on family in your book. If you notice, I've put in the chat a link to where you can buy books from today's 3 poets from bookshop.org, including their latest works. So I hope you'll check out the chat for that. Next up, we have Rowan Ricardo Phillips, who is a professor of English at Williams and a visiting professor of creative writing at Princeton. He's the author of 3 books of poetry, 2 books of nonfiction, and a book of translated fiction. He's a recipient of the Guggenheim Fellowship, 2 PEN Awards, a Whiting Award, and the Ansfield Wolf Book Prize, among others. His most recent book of poems, which you'll find at that link that I just put, Living Weapon, was published by Farrar, Straus and Giroux. We are really excited to have Rowan here tonight, and welcome.
Thanks so much, much appreciated. I'm going to read a few poems from Living Weapon, and then I'll read a few new poems. Love Song. Not who or what you love, but that you love. That to stand there or sit there, to simply be, this is hard. To look across from you, where someone else or no one or both may or may not be, this is hard. This is hard because you love and have learned not to love. You say love, say you're filled with love, even to the edge of doom and all that. But how perverse and proximal hate can be. Like a volcano emptying itself onto the small town sprouting in its shade. Hate ruling your continent. Hate burning your air. Hate sitting beside you under a perfect moon, leaning in like love would as the moon fades into the blue whiteness of dawn. We all share that awed silence while the woke birds sing. We're all savages. Even Homer nods. You can be a mother who knows a god, and you can ask him for magic armor, a shield the width of Saturn's wildest rings, some helmet in the new or ancient style. Fill your arms with defenses for your child. Take the peacock feather you've been offered and plant it in that helmet's crown, or keep it for yourself to use as a pen. Note, this was the only option you were offered: stylist or witness. Witness with stylus, so that you'd circle down the drain with death, mourning in either silence or sound bites, surrounded by silence and sound bites. Life like this having been polished to shine in the normal ways things shine these days. A dull lull. The type of insufficient glare we used to call out on sight as useless glow, but now, in new darkness, we feel a need for a consolation of presence. As when my mother passed me the soft shield, the breastplate like rice paper, the helmet bright as pyrite can be. We already knew that this was part of the old cycle, that I would die soon without a weapon, and she'd live on. And we'd do this again and again and again, without ever knowing we were the weapons ourselves, stronger than steel, story, and hydrogen. Here in America, where we wonder still, after everything that's happened, why anyone bothers to read the classics. The Peacock. Music for when music is over is what a poem is. There's no music in a poem, just the imaginary composer breathing beneath the deep wreck. The curves of that glorious alphabet, resilient as bioluminescence stuck in the seafloor. There's something to it, how poems pretend to sing. As a peacock pretends in the wide span of its plumage, that there's no end to it. The far stars of galaxies and its ocelli gazed and gazing as one. The first fissions finally arriving at the listener, who makes sense of it sooner or later. Thoughts and prayers. And so, what comes after heaven that's not heaven? Even Lucifer, having been hollowed out by lightning, cored by it, still called the sour sulfide lakes and charred meadows that sprung up there, the dungscape, the sky tiled with its constellate of apostate dead, all this Lucifer still called heaven. And so, what comes after heaven, if not itself? The end then is always just the beginning of the end of that end. This is when we discover what evil really is. The end of endings, the death of change. That moment when you survey what has fallen into your range of sight and say, this is good enough. This will do. History. It's late. History promises you a kiss when she comes to bed. So you say goodnight. You're tired and can't keep your eyes open, so you called it surprisingly early. She, like every night this summer, stays up to watch her shows. Later, she woke you, accidentally, with a light you thought was dawn, but was just the white haze of her cell. You stayed half awake in the lit darkness, thinking she owed you something, a mere kiss, waiting, one eye half open, like the flesh in a shell sensing a swimmer pass. The light turned off as if it never happened. And nothing came to you because you were owed absolutely nothing. Not even the growing indifference in her voice. I'll just read a few post-living weapon poems. The first one I'll read is Prelude. This actually leads off the Faber edition of Living Weapon, but I wrote it after the FSG version, so it's not in the US edition. Prelude. 1. My grandmother saw it coming and left. I'd already left. It came late and swift, like a tidal wave mistaken for a wave. Came not as a note, but as an octave, black-keyed and mangled, searching the hospice, only to find she'd left without notice. The soul clapped from her body, masked by death, death hiding death from death, and finding no sign of her in the high cheekbones or skin, strode out on a cough into the evening. 2. In the weeks between her death and being laid to rest, life became COVID-19. Both the living and the dead shared one air. Then the service came, and I was not there. I watched from the safe distance of an app as my mother and uncle, massed among the massed few in a pewless space, made peace with the orphans who'd come to take their place. Looking at them on screen was like looking out at the world through the bars of a cage. 3. And now, high on a slope near Van Cortlandt, the immortelles of perfect pitch sing Ina Harris to sleep. Her shade goes there to listen, bathed in the scent of ilex, palm, linden, kapok. It is Easter and she is dressed in her lilac vest and hat her daughter crossed Bridge and Bronx and Plague to bring to her. She is 2 steps ahead of this pentameter as it follows her through the flexed valley of the shadow of death. This elegy, which, like all of them, is so useless and late. My grandmother saw it coming, and she left. Romanticism. Late autumn in the orange bronze ranges, and the sky still wet with slaughter. The vote done. Dying goldenrod, tuning the meadows beige under flecks of birds that flex the air into one black V after another. Carrying with them the occasional silence that flight coaxes from the chest, throat, and mind, coaxes from the altitude's blue view to me. Though the bright air, no matter how clear, is viscous with the virus, not dew. It comes and goes like the heat of the sun, a heavy haze of grand scale indifference to the mazy motion of the river that bends away from the small town nearby as I raise my window for one final song of summer, to leap into my room and chant to my well-funded memory when the window is shut tight and the cold burns and I press my nose against the glass for one brief glimpse of God in this world. What moves in the far off fade spectrum of the wattage as daylight grows dimmer and that feeling comes and goes? What is it? I have asked myself again and again, and I want to tell you that it's something else, something new, a cure for this world. So I do, and then I don't, and then I do. And I'm going to end with a poem called Riverman. Well, it's actually called Fantasia in a Time of Plague. You know, sometimes you have these little shorthand titles for your poems. It appeared in the anthology A Strange Suddenness, Together in a Strange Suddenness, which Alice Quinn edited for Camouflage. It came out recently. Fantasia in a Time of Plague. Went to see the riverman. Told him all I could about my plan. He said, "Nah, son, I'm good." You might be surprised to find that he spoke like he was from the hood. But look around. Shade covers every square inch of the ground. Night is the political symbol we're unable to make less literal. A blindness to simple basic kindness. That's the hood, not the hood. The riverman and all the rivers Milton shouted out to, for Lycidas understood this. But he was the myth of a mourning kid kidding himself that he cared about king or sin or killing kings. But let me take that back, because he got locked up for that. Poetry is seance and silence and science holed up in the hood and herring through the wood. Part pasture and part hood, a rendition of tradition unplanned. Black hoodie pulled back so the ears can see what the eyes don't see. Like a river that bends out of sight, but still roars in your head. As the riverman said it would on those sleepless nights, when you hear the dead and the living at the river, complicit as kites, and rhyming about civil rights. Thank you very much. Muchísimas gracias.
That was absolutely beautiful. Not just the poems, but your presentation of them. Thank you. Thank you for sharing from Living Weapon as well as the more recent ones. That was a treat for us to get to hear that. Hopefully you can come read for us in person when we're fully back open. Last up, we have Katherine Hollander, Boston native. She's a poet and a historian, and she's a graduate of Marlborough College and got her PhD from Boston University. In 2019, her book of poems, My German Dictionary, won the Anthony Hecht Poetry Prize. She's also a Brecht scholar. She's the editor of a new student edition of Mother Courage and Her Children. and she serves as poetry editor for Consequence. She's an associate editor of Waywiser Press and teaches history and creative writing in the Boston area. Welcome, Kate.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Dee Dee and James and everyone at the Grolier, and Jennifer and Rowan. This is so wonderful. It's hard to follow you both. This has just been such a treat. All right. So I am an historian as well as a poet, and I have never, until today, had such a quick turnaround from being a historian to being a poet. I mean, I'm always both, but I just finished teaching a class, also on Zoom, sitting in the same desk, talking with my graduate students about European 19th and early 20th century European socialism. So now I'm here with you all. Yes, this is my book, my German dictionary, and it definitely grows out of my study of all those things. And so I'm actually, my students in our conversation is very much on my mind. So I'm going to do something I don't normally do and start with some poems in the middle of the book. I'm going to read 3 poems from a series called Book of Icons. They're short poems about figures, historical figures from this period that I study, who were enthusiastic about socialism and other political movements, and who also ran afoul of those. So I'm going to read 3, one for the poet, the Russian poet Osip Mandelstam, one for the German or the Polish German theoretician and politician Rosa Luxemburg, and then one for Karl Kautsky, who is also a German activist. Icon for Osip Mandelstam. For you, I would rename this kinship of stars, salt on the axe handle. Over your left shoulder, a forest of conifers burns, but is not consumed. So nothing troubles the wolves beneath their branches like blue shadows. Your eyes are the dark eyes of a swan. Through the air in formation like a flock of winter geese, the Hellenic ships sweep the wind with their sails. And to your finger, the goldfinch has come in his yellow cape, the dark asterisks of his feet. Stout-hearted, last seen mad in a transit camp, black bread, the black rot of wet stumps, and salt on the axe blade, Osip, for your sake. Icon for Rosa Luxemburg. When you first crossed the border to Germany, you came covered up, hidden in a wagon like a tumbril. That sour little country, still the hope of your Europe, where you made an uneasy home, a mouse in a knife drawer. Sturdy engine, you, squat and self-sufficient economy, in your good boots with your limp, the frilled lip of your oyster-shaped hat, your murderous red language. They killed you in the Eden Hotel and put you in a river. I want to believe the last words you said in German. I want to believe you said, don't shoot. But hush now, here you are, not in prison, weeping over a beaten ox, not beside yourself in August 14, but in the meadow you love so much, up to your waist in the deep grass and wildflowers, your eyes covered with a bright visor of light. Icon for Kalkowski. Idea architect, the red rainbow flutters behind you like an academic sash. The sky itself is robin's egg green and fretted with cracks. And here you sit in your dark suit and neat beard like a good scholar. Like a good scholar, you were hopeful, but you knew when the truth had to be faced. Your eyes are formal and sad. One of them sees revolution. The other sees the day after revolution. You know you see neither in Russia. You know that whatever it is you want for the people, violence unfits them for it. Your third eye, which no one can see, looks out anxiously as you wait by the coffee pot for the last 2 men of German social democracy to come home from their walk. You are right to be worried. They are picking off your friends one by one. A whole constellation of stars put out, fondest uncle, singly at first, and then all at once. I just realized in rereading those poems that how much of them is kind of inspired by or pulled from the Von Trotta film about Rosa Luxemburg, which I just taught today. So if you haven't seen that movie, it's really good. All right, I'm going to start with the first poem from the book, which is called Confession Invitation. And I always have to talk a little bit about this poem and just say that it's full of truths that are like heart truths, but they're not really linear narrative truths. So the things that happen in the poem that seem to happen in a certain order actually in real life happened in the opposite order. And I can say a little bit about what that means later, but here goes. That was my first confession. Now here's the real one. Confession invitation. I couldn't be a good Jew, so I tried to be a good historian. I couldn't be a good historian, so I wrote poems. I couldn't write about the Shoah, so I wrote about the Somme. My heart is not a pocket watch. I wrote swans, snails, stars, and mud. I couldn't sleep, so I tried sleepwalking. I couldn't sleepwalk, so I just dreamed. Oh, Dr. Father, Oak Owl, Grandfather Clock, why didn't you help God, Papa? Why didn't you help me? Nuremberg, Nuremberg, my old hometown. Tell me, however should I find such a country? I didn't love a nation, I loved an idea. I don't trust policemen, I don't look at stray dogs, I don't trust clocks. I am unpacking my library, yes, I am. The good traveling coat has a fox fur collar and a fat gold tassel at the shoulder. Pull on it, and from the wide sleeve, a little cedar ladder nudges out, ready to take you away. This is the point at which I always try to say, like, I think I am actually like a good historian, or at least not a bad one. So. All right. The Wounded Soldier. Now I have a scar down the middle, like a seam where a pressed tin toy, a bird or a dog comes together. What intimacies that the doctor has seen my clockwork, has had his hands inside my softness. Who's after me this time? Napoleon? Bismarck? Patroclus, the lovely doomed. I could lie here in the fragrance of naphtha. During my worst sickness, I was so lost and hungry that I went out of myself into the North Hills and over the ice, and only a family of bears had pity on me. They had taken off their skins and hung them up in the hallway, and without them, they looked just like men. Their children looked just like our children. For me, they boiled meat, though they ate it raw themselves. What courtesy! When they were sending me home, they said, "Don't tell the other men about us. We have children and they deserve to grow up." They lifted the dark metal from over my heart. It's better to breathe deeply than to be praised. I will read a couple of poems, thank you so much, from the last part of the book, which is a long series of poems, one each for every letter of the alphabet, and each one is a German word. And I started writing these poems because as mnemonics, as I was trying to kind of remember German vocabulary as part of my process of trying to master the language. So I'll just read a couple of these. Immer. This means always. No city can compete with this city, capital of ghastliness, beauty, and dawn. White sky, the street lamps turning out like diamonds going dark. A wet kitten drinks milk on a windowsill. The drowned girl makes her long way down the river under bridges. Her eyes are looking at the moon. To her fingers come the fish like swallows. The night's bodies tend morgueward. A war hero, legless, sharpens pencils, readied like a clutch of arrows. Mothers are ironing. Children are sleeping in rooms papered with money, patterns of leader faces, wheat sheaves, and stars. The sun is rising. The street cleaner comes, as ever. Here's one called Der Quellbach, which means the source of a brook or a wellspring. The first thing is never to be precious about the puppets. Let them be. They might sit slumped on a shelf. They might hang over the back of a chair. Do not be seduced by any power you imagine is theirs without you. Beware of feeding them soup. Beware of speaking to them if you have belted them into the back seat of the car. No, to have real respect for these figures, you must know when the soul in them is sleeping. You must know what it means when you shake your whole arm and they dance. Now you are in relation to one another. Now the blue light wakes in the wooden face. Now when you speak, he will listen. He will turn the poor shell of his ear, the soft flannel of his breast. He will turn them to you so soulfully, the way you would if God ever spoke to you in the little indigo theater of the world. All right, I think I should finish up. You've all been such a good audience, and I know there is such a thing as Zoom fatigue. So I'll read just these two short ones, and then we'll be done. This is the poem for the letter X, which is a German abbreviation, an old-fashioned German abbreviation for the month of December. A bad man said that potatoes rest in cellars just as much as poem books. In cellars and in knapsacks, both cracked open could nourish armies. Comfort and warmth, fork and breath. Imagine it for a moment, the lights in the windows. But snow doesn't land like powdered sugar in a wound. Stars that might have opened up and sung a carol roll like glass eyes frosty in the bottom of a drawer. That's the sky, what we did to it. And we shot the boys we should have loved. We made thunder hide her comely head in shame. We outdid thunder. Trees leapt in horror, their roots slipping from the earth like tubes out of an arm. The whole world needs a surgeon. This bluest month goes sluicing down the drain. A potato for my mouth and for my ear a poem. I start my march in Kiel and end in Rome. I really loved hearing the love poems of various sorts, actually, that we heard earlier tonight. So I'll end with a love poem called Zusammen, which means together. Death, don't talk to me all the time, just sometimes. And God won't talk to me all the time, but sometimes. Yet you will talk to me all the time with your words and with your silences. So call the red dogs, call the bear in his deep overcoat, wake him from sleep. Wake the king curled inside the fur and wake the horses, all the horses. Fetch the lion, call the birds. If there's bread, we shall have it, and milk and a little chair to sit in. I want a star, glazed and fat as a cake. I want a house like a nightlight, a road that leads to the wood's green heart. Let that which follows us, intimate and mysterious, go ahead. Let that which falls away wave goodbye like a tree. Call everyone, call everything loved. Take my hand, let's go. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Catherine. That was wonderful. I usually like to ask at the end if there's any upcoming events or appearances that any of the poets want to share or promote or tell us about. I know there may not be, since we're sort of.
I like to take the summer off. I'm taking the summer off, unplugging my computer and living in the sea for the months of July and August.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
But thanks for asking.
Jennifer, Kate, anything you'd like to, any
No.
appearance coming up?
I love the idea of taking the summer off and living in the sea. That sounds perfect. Yeah, this is sort of like the one on the docket, and I don't know what's coming next. Thank you for asking though.
Sure. Again, check out the chat. I put a link up to where you can purchase books by all three authors, including The Pact, Living Weapon, and My German Dictionary, and some of their personal websites where you can follow them. So thank you, the three of you. That was absolutely wonderful. And join us, please, on June 26th for some Russian and Serbian poetry. And then on August 12th, Rita Dove is doing a reading for us. So please keep in touch, and we look forward to seeing you all in person. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming. Had a really wonderful time with you all.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you so much all for being here. And it was a great evening. Thanks, Grolier.
I guess that's it.